Welcome to Not So PG. I'm Brooke Blurton. My pronouns are she and her.
I'm Matty Mills. My pronouns are he and him. And before we get started, we'd like to acknowledge the custodians of the land on which we record. For me, that's the Gadigal People of the Eora Nation.
And for me, that's the Rogan people of the Coolden Nation.
Well, today obviously is a very it's a special episode.
It's a bit different to our normal format.
Yeah, we're not going to be doing the general banter catch up and having a good old laugh at the beginning. We're going to jump straight into an episode based on life expectancy because we think that it's so important to talk about, and especially for people out there to have awareness around this. We unfortunately die many years younger than the rest of the population, and today we're going to unpack some of those figures and do a bit of a deep dive into why that is, and talk about our general life experience and also our family's experience with this topic.
Yeah, it's not an easy topic. I mean, we've lost a lot of loved ones who have died very young. And I mean, I have an experience that my mum was 34, my sister was 33. I'm now close to 30. Like, these are things that we have to be realistic about. We need to talk about. And obviously they're really quite difficult to understand and talk about. So as much as it is a shitty topic, right now the rates are just increasing, I guess, of people dying young.
Yeah, I think that when I was growing up and especially in high school, and when we'd have an opportunity to be able to talk about this within schools, which was a very brief moment, it never was something that was highlighted for a long period of time. It was just a random fact that was thrown into a history lesson. It was always a shock to me, and I always felt that it was unfair that our people had to die younger. And I know that there are so many contributing factors to the reason our life expectancy is lower than the wider population. But I think that when I realised that it was possible that my life was going to end sooner than my counterparts at school or my friends at school, just because I was an Aboriginal man, it was actually quite alarming. And I remember thinking the statistics were lower than this. They were lower than this at that point when I remember. So I think it was closer to 20 years. And I went to a predominantly white school, a school that had extreme privilege and kids who had an extreme amount of wealth, that these sort of statistics and these sort of comprehending this sort of data didn't really affect them. They never wanted to learn more about it. They didn't want to understand why Aboriginal men and women were dying earlier, why our life expectancy was much lower than their parents or their grandparents or them themselves. And I think that it came down to the fact that they didn't understand the contributing factors, but also they didn't have to deal with the contributing factors. I'm talking poverty, lack of healthcare, poor housing, and growing up in a cycle of intergenerational trauma. Like, they didn't have to deal with these things. So I feel like they weren't invested in understanding. And I think that when it comes to this stuff, information is key. And I think that that's how we can shift the dial. And I think that I'm really hoping that one of the main factors that contribute to this in a positive way is the voice.
Yes.
If it's going to do anything, I hope that it allows the government to receive information that may help us live longer.
Yeah. I mean, my experience with talking about this previously has been with some of my ex-partners.
Yeah.
And one of the common things that they say to me when I say, well, I'll die younger than you. And I'm just pretty abrupt. I mean, matter of fact, right? Like, that's what the statistics say. Like, that's what's going to happen in my eyes, right? Because I've seen it and it's happened.
Yep.
So that's my lived experience. Now, when I tell my partners, this information, they're like, well, no, you live a very healthy lifestyle. Like, you'll beat it.
Yeah.
And they don't understand that it's not the fact that I live a lifestyle like I'm going to escape it.
Yes.
It's actually also like my family have a history of health problems due to colonisation.
Yeah.
Like disease. They also have diabetes.
Yes.
Now that's been, diabetes isn't hereditary, I don't think.
No, I don't think it is.
Don't quote me on that.
Yeah.
But I have a history of it in my family.
Yeah.
I also have a history of heart disease and heart problems.
Yes.
And I also, as a child, had a lot of health problems because I lived in that poverty and I lived in places that were poor housing commissions and bad hygiene. And I was on antibiotics, like, taking Western medicine basically most of my childhood to fight those infections. Yeah. And now I deal with the effects of that. I cannot even process tablets well because it just really screws up my whole bio in my body. Yeah. And I had ear, nose and throat problems, which affect me now. I get vertigo quite prominent because I fly a lot for work. So I've, had this career that I need to fly. But then I also have problems with, I get vertigo. So then it makes me nauseous and then I'm sick because of my ear, nose and throat issues that I had as a child. So sometimes it can be an effect. So when my ex-partners say to me, oh, but you'll live a good life because you live a healthy lifestyle. It's not necessarily always the case.
No.
And I think that's something we need to really take in consideration when it comes to being with an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander person about these statistics, and also think about the families. Now, I know you said you think the voice will contribute to helping and hopefully,
raising this,
But the thing is, right, what we've noticed about having Albo in office is that he has an experience with the Housing Commission, so he understands in that degree, but he won't ever understand the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander experience, and I don't think anyone will unless you are. But he sort of knows. And I think the promises that he's made, some of them we've seen he's following through with them. Now, he's really advocated that he believes in the voice. Now, the voice is not some magic miracle thing that's just going to take away all of our problems. What the voice is going to do is help Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people make decisions for our people.
Yep.
So it's going to have a body or a party that they're the people that are consulted and help us make decisions and take agency over our own lives, which what we've seen when white politicians make these decisions like the welfare card and what we've seen in remote communities hasn't always positively impacted Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people.
Yeah.
So if we can make decisions that we know will help have an impact and change those health problem standard and raise the life expectancy, then why wouldn't we want to do that?
Yeah.
And I think the voice is a start. It's not the end. It's a start. Now we're looking at, I think the statistics are sort of at the polling at the moment is sitting at an 85% a yes vote. And I think we still need to get it over the line. But I think regardless of what happens throughout the voice, it's not a magic miracle worker.
Yeah.
It's not going to raise that life expectancy. What is going to raise, I think, is initiatives that we've introduced, but things that we need to commit to as a nation. I think we did start this initiative years ago called Closing the Gap, and that was to close that life expectancy between Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people to non-Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people.
Yeah.
And that has gotten smaller.
Yeah.
The fact that it's even that distinguished is actually the scary thing.
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying. I think the initiative was to be able to close the gap within a certain amount of time. And I know that there are so many closing the gap measures that haven't actually even hardly closed. Some
have
of them
come close.
Yeah, some of them have actually widened.
Exactly.
And I think that when it comes to that initiative, it was definitely the first time that I had in my life that I had heard of a government initiative that was going to look at these major issues within our community. But as you say, it's been non-Indigenous people making decisions for Aboriginal people without that general life experience of being a blackfella. And I think, especially when I go home or onto country or go to remote communities, sometimes I'm still shocked by the level of poverty and the level of disadvantage and the level of the lack of access to health. And you can see it in the faces of the kids who live there. You know what I mean?
Exactly,
these kids, you know exactly the cycle of what they're going through. And I think what's really important is for us to remember, between the ages of 0 and 7, they're the
vital years.
They're the vital years, foundation years. That's where you learn a lot. That's where you develop a lot as a young person. And those developing years, if they're not fulfilled to the highest capacity with, proper healthcare, access to food, healthy food, and if those years where you're supposed to be building, a strong and resilient young person, it's a major struggle for parents and blackfellas in remote and regional communities to be able to provide the level of, I suppose, care that is needed between the ages of 0 and 7. And I think that's where it starts. It's like how, and if we're looking at where should we target, we need to make sure that we target those younger lives, because even though we're talking about the life expectancy of Aboriginal people, and that's at someone's end of their life, it's so important that we shift the dial and focus on how can we create strong young people, healthy, strong young people with a connection to community and culture. And I think that they leave that out, right? They're constantly thinking of a Western world and a Western system when it comes to what is health and what is good for a young person, with all the, systems in place and all the, the healthcare system and the resources that are sometimes provided, without still the connection to culture and community. That young person, especially in cultural way, isn't a healthy person. Disconnection can create all sort of issues. And I think that and so when I think about kids still being taken away from family and community, and yes, they might be given some things when it comes to, other opportunities or, in quotation marks, a better life, that disconnection actually plays a major role in the health and the wellness, mental, physical, of that young person for when they get older, because that lack of connection is something that I believe really contributes to a lot of the time when people go off the rails or have, longer term mental health issues.
One of the things that you had said was the disconnect can cause so many other health concerns, and there's other determinants that can cause exactly that as well. Mm-hmm. I was thinking to that because when I used to run a mental health training course, I would talk a lot to the social and emotional well-being wheel, I would refer to it as, to an Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islander person, to a non-Aboriginal, and it's kind of like, think of it as a pie or a pizza, and it's got all these different slices which contribute to a person's mental health. And think of that as, what we are daily in our lives, right? And there's so many different, social and historical determinants, but what inside of us is our connection to spirit, spirituality and emotions and ancestors, our connection to body, our connection to country, our connection to culture. And these are all like pieces, and these are all slices. There's connection to community, connection to family and kinship, and connection to mind and emotions. And middle is our self. Now, if we have a disconnect to any of those slices and you take away from that, take away from that wheel or pizza or pie, whatever you want to, sort of visualize it as, you're not going to feel your whole self. Yeah. You're not going to feel like you have... You're grounded, or you don't have that sense of belonging. And that can cause so many other mental health issues. And what we've seen when we are struggling mentally is our health is the first thing that we can neglect. When we feel depressed, we isolate ourselves. We notice that, we have anxiety, we don't want to eat, we lose our appetite, we're anxious, etc. And so there's a cause and effect, and that's just simply our mental health. Now, the layers on top of that is that disconnection from country. So say you were taken away from your family as a child, you're going to have that disconnect and that belonging taken away from you. So you're not going to know where you belong in the world. You're going to have identity issues because you don't know where you place in this world. So you're not going to take care of yourself. So therefore, there's going to be a ripple effect again in that health again. The layer again on top of that is the historical determinants, and I think obviously colonization is definitely one of those. We know that we've spoken to, statistics that people experience poverty, poor health and nutrition, all of those things. But I think as well, it's that dispossession of the traditional lands, like being taken off your land to then have to adapt to a whole nother living is another health concern. And I think people don't realise that. They think, oh, well, we'll take them off the land and they'll have a better life because they will have access to healthcare and they will have access to all of these things. But they're not looking at the whole picture. They're not looking at it holistically.
Yeah.
And I think that's a misunderstanding that a lot of non-Aboriginal people take and don't understand. And I think that's what Albanese has promised, is that he will support this voice, which therefore is giving us a voice and changing constitution, because in the last 100 and something years, more than that obviously, but in the 100 years plus that the constitution has existed, it hasn't recognised Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as people. The only note of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in the constitution it has is under the Discrimination Act. And we still face racial discrimination, etc., like today. So it doesn't change anything. And I think, it's not going to change overnight. These health problems aren't going to change overnight, but we're thinking bigger picture stuff now, and we would want to see those life expectancy statistics minimized.
Yeah, well, I think that, like, as you said, like, there's an opportunity now because there is such a massive framework of consultation that's, hopefully going to be implemented. I think that growing up and then being able to sort of have the experience of growing up in poverty and also, experiencing what that looks like, how that manifests itself through health, and then being able to sort of continue to live, but sort of understand that even though now I live a healthy life and I have, a good focus on my health and well-being, that those years in the beginning still will play a part in my health in the long run, and being able to just be aware of that as well, because I think health is something, when it touches Aboriginal people and when Aboriginal people become unhealthy, they decline very quickly. And especially our old people. I've seen it happen with my auntie just recently. She went into hospital and her health declined rapidly, so quick.
Can you give an example? I mean, and I don't mean to sort of pull your trauma out of this, because that's not what I'm trying to do, but I'm just trying to also provide people a perspective, like, how many people have you lost and what ages were they?
In the last 5 years, I've had 6 funerals, and there's been more that I haven't actually been able to go to. But, most of the older people, when it comes to their health, had a rapid decline at the end of their 50s. And as the life expectancy shows, that most people won't get through a lot of people don't get through their 60s in our community. I've seen that happen multiple times throughout my life, and it became a haunting figure because my dad now is 63. And I see my dad starting to slow down. And when I spoke about having to have really difficult conversations with my brothers, this is the yarn that I'm talking about. It's going, we need to look at the figures. We need to understand the historical context within our family. Most our mob, if any, get to 70. So we need to now start having proper yarns about how we can best support our family when they get to this age, because it's a scary, it really is a scary idea to think that we don't have long left with them. But it's where my brain has gone recently, especially after my dad's, recent sort of health scares, and just seeing the way that once he turned 60, it's sort of. There was a shift in energy. There was a decline in his health, and I've seen it happen with aunties. My uncle, both my auntie and uncle died in their early 60s. My two of my brothers died in their 30s, and all of those things contribute to this statistic. My brother died, Howard, from a health condition that he battled for a long time, and then my other brother was murdered. And for me, it's like both of those things actually are a reflection of the struggle and the challenges it is to be an Aboriginal person sometimes in small communities. Even when it comes to Mikey, it's like that lifestyle of alcoholism, drug abuse contributed to the death of my brother, and not on his behalf. And then, that my brother struggled with a health condition for most of his life, ever since he was a little kid, and only survived till he was, 32. So for me, I see like this life expectancy is something I'm hugely passionate about and want to see change in, especially as I report in the media and work for the Indigenous broadcaster. I'm constantly talking about death in custody. There's something that also contributes to this. Young people dying in prisons in very unsafe places. And then I'm continuously talking about the disadvantage of our people in this country. And I hate that word disadvantage, because if we peel away all the layers of colonisation and all the effects that that's had on our people, we are a beautiful, richly cultured group of, group of people. And for me, it's so upsetting when all of these statistics, all of the facts around our health, our poverty, the struggles of drug and alcohol abuse, the financial struggles of our people, all of these things that contribute, just make me think that our culture is being smeared. There's something that is holding us back and holding us down, and they are all indicators of colonisation. And it's like when people hear that, I know that's going to be polarizing. People are going to go, it's not colonization that's doing it. Well, if you actually list the things that are
historical context, yes.
And if you're listing the things that are contributing to the lack of life expectancy, these are all factors that were brought here by the Western world.
Yeah.
We need to be able to work with what we have, and in terms of the life and the country that we live in now, and be able to positively impact our communities by creating legislation. But also I think it's about understanding the really important factors that are never outlined within these initiatives, which is culture.
Well, yeah.
It's always dismissed.
Exactly. I guess a lot of questions, I think, from people would be, how do we help or how do we make change with this? I remember actually doing an assignment on life expectancy, and I wrote 5 things that I think could help make a difference with this. Now, obviously the first one for me was access to healthcare, which we spoke about in this episode, was spoken about a lot. So the increase of having access to healthcare, people don't think that, it's just getting to the healthcare spot. Yeah, right? Just get to the health clinic, right? That's all you need to do. No. It's a partly government issue as well, because a lot of the mob who want to access healthcare and want to go to the clinic or to places, another issue that I wrote down was cultural safety.
That's right. Absolutely.
And they don't have that cultural safety element, so therefore they don't go. You, like your dad and I, we chatted on the phone recently about how your dad has got all these health problems, but he doesn't want to talk about it. And that's a very old fella thing, because he
doesn't feel safe. And he feels there's a lot of shame. There's a lot of shame because of the stereotypes that have been put on our people as well. They're embarrassed to go to see a doctor and talk about their health, whether it's mental health, sexual health, physical health. It's actually, there's a huge shame barrier, and that comes at a price. And what that price is the fact that they're not getting the help that they need, because they don't feel like they may be judged, just for being an Aboriginal person.
Well, that's exactly it. And it's also the, again, on that access. When we think about things like the welfare card that existed years ago. So Abbott created this welfare card, which obviously wasn't consulted or spoken to.
It wasn't
and
the
about
answer, girl. It wasn't the answer.
It wasn't. But this is a thing. So one of the other notes that I wrote when I was doing this assignment on life expectancy was supporting community-led initiatives.
Yeah.
That mob need for mob. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Because they're often, honestly, they know what their needs are. They know what community want and feel like will help.
Yes.
But no one consults with them. They're always kind of straight to practical, Western society, Western-led medicine or something like that. And that's not necessarily the case. Yeah. And that's what gets me so frustrated, because it's like, this could help, listening to community-led initiatives and supporting them and putting foundational things and not stripping that and taking that away from community. Because every time there's a change in government, those community programs that are on the ground working get stripped and they get taken away. And that's what has the biggest impact on our children. Like, think about, right, a young community-led program that employs Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people into education, which therefore then they help the young kids. So they're the ones doing...
They have a trusted relationship with the people in the community. Yeah,
exactly. And they're the things that could help minimise the health problems and this life expectancy gap that we have, right?
But you know what? A lot of these programs, sis, they don't have ongoing funding. And I find that this is the issue. So what happens
is... it's a government issue.
Yeah, that 100%. So what happens is they have these temporary Band-Aid solutions where they come in for four years a term and they say, okay, we're going to give you 4 years of funding for this model. They don't have the patience to see the actual outcomes, because what they do is at the end of that 4 years when the government changes, these people who have now lost employment, they have now lost the young, especially the young people have now lost this program that was contributing positively to their life and their life expectancy. It just goes by the wayside. And so patience is vital when it comes to improving the life expectancy of our people. It's a long-term thing. It's not going to be fixed overnight. It's something that we need to look at decade by decade.
Picture.
And I think that when it comes to these programs, there needs to be cemented funding for much longer periods, because 4 years isn't going to change the life expectancy of an Aboriginal person, but 40 years might. And these are programs and these initiatives can evolve, but I think the funding and the investment in this problem needs to be long-term.
Yes, I feel very hopeful. Like I'm trying to put a bit of faith into our government at the moment, because
it's the best one we've had for a long time.
Yeah, and I think there is things that he's implementing that looks to that big picture, which I'm really hopeful about. I'm really having a lot of faith in. So I think also he understands the historical context of what colonisation has caused.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of my other notes, is address the impact of historical trauma.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
So, exactly.
Hasn't that bloody
the legacy
created a weight?
100%. So these are obviously these strategies, they're not going to change overnight. Yeah, they're exhaustive in so many ways as well. But I think improve the access to healthcare for mob, address the social determinants which we've spoken about, like poverty, education, access, increase cultural safety. We need to be having more, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, health workers, and supporting them to help support our people.
Yep.
So then that goes to supporting community-led initiatives.
Yes.
And then we need to address the impact of historical trauma. So understanding that all this does come from the trauma of colonisation, even if we don't want to admit it.
Yep.
It's the truth-telling of this nation.
Yeah.
That's what we did, voice, treaty, truth. Whatever comes first, whether it's the voice or whether it's a treaty, it's still that bigger picture stuff. But this is what's going to contribute to reducing, I think, those life expectancy stats.
And you know what?
And we can only hope.
We have 7 years until they're supposedly going to hit those targets with the closing the gap. And
7 years?
7 years. I want a longer investment than that. I think that we should be able to close the gap within that, close the gap slightly within that time. But I want a long-term investment for these measures to change.
Our nation, our so-called Australia, has a population of 25 mil, I think it's estimated at.
Yep.
I don't know how I know that, but it's a really random fact of mine.
So random.
Melbourne sort of sits at much higher than sort of Sydney now. I think we're like a higher population than you guys.
I know.
And sort of where I was living in Western Australia was about 2 million. But our population, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, the people that have been, I guess, identified with being Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander, is 3.3% of the population, which is only sort of estimated to be about under a mil.
Yeah.
So why are we statistically dying younger? Why are we statistically disadvantaged? Why do we not have agency over our own lives?
I think that, I think you've given some really good ways of people being able to contribute to helping this too.
Well, if they want good, tangible, strategies, I think as much as they're not like things that, you know, can fix overnight, or they're not, you know, they obviously need a bigger deep dive into and to look at it. I'm not some researcher. I'm not a healthcare worker. Well, I am a healthcare worker. I work in mental health. And I've seen the effects of it. But I think we also need to refer back to that social and emotional well-being and look at how we can help our Aboriginal and Torres Strait people, you know, have agency of their lives, but then also feel that whole as that self social and emotional well-being wheel is that the middle bit is yourself, your connect to all of those things and reconnecting all of those things so that we can live better quality of life.
Yeah, and look, we are only two First Nations people having a yarn about this because it's on our hearts. But for you mob listening, go and do your own research. Look up Closing the Gap. Take a deep dive into what this is all about, and you'll be shocked by some of these statistics and hopefully inspired to help us with changing this for our people. But that's all we have time for today. Thank you so much for listening. It's been, you know, a really important episode for us. Leave us a 5-star rating or a little review.
Also, we wouldn't be not open about feedback as well. So if you have some feedback or some advice, please feel free to message us.
That would be great.
Yeah. Have a great day, guys. See ya.
Bye.